everyone, welcome back to a new episode of New Frontier. I'm joined today by Corporal Dmytro Vasilov. Dmytro, thank you for joining.
The pleasure is all mine.
Dmytro, just for context for our audience, why don't you start by sharing your story of how you came to be a part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces?
All right, my first try was 2015. It was about half of the year into Russian invasion into Ukraine, like the smaller one that's Eastern Crimea that no one really remembers about. And back then there was a surge of the people motivation to join armed forces of the Ukraine, so I also went in. And back then they looked at my medical record and said that, all right, you can go through medical commission, maybe they will decide that you're eligible despite all of your concussions and broken bones, or you can give us a little token of gratitude and we take you in. I decided, no way I'm going to fight for that. So then I volunteered for about 2 years in the Kiev City administration, doing English lessons for war veterans and their families. And that's how I got connections with Ukrainian veteran community and also with some U.S. military expats that spent their time in Ukraine who founded this NGO, who volunteered to provide better English standards for the Ukrainian veterans. And the round 2 was the late 2021 when war was in the air.
Did you know it was coming?
Well, the entire Russian army was stationed around the border of Ukraine for about 6 months by then. And every day you had a news that everybody was telling that Russian invasion imminent, and things were getting tense. So this was the moment that it's I don't want the war to happen, but I gotta get prepared. And I was running every weekend the TC3 drills in Bucha, in the Blast Center, the Ukrainian NGO that does military preparations. So
Which drills?
TC3, it's combat medicine, how do you apply tourniquets, how do you apply bandages, how do you do the wound packing, how do you casevac, and all of this stuff. So they did pretty good training, and it helped me well. And the day it started, I made it. I remember my wife woke me up.
Were you back in Kyiv?
Yes, back in Kyiv, in my apartment, my wife wakes me up and says Dima, the war has started. And okay, plan war. Also, could you please stop starting world wars by bombing Kyiv so early? It was 5 a.m.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, this might be obvious to you, but why did you decide to enlist rather than, frankly, go to Poland or Germany or Denmark? I want to get more into your background in a little bit, but, you're highly educated. You were working in the IT sector, if I remember correctly. I know of a lot of stories of people who are still, frankly, avoiding enlistment. Why was it important for you?
So about 1 month before the start of this full-scale Russian invasion, I had 3 invitations for relocations from different clients of my outsourcing company. I could choose from US, Britain, or Japan. They all wanted Dmytro, we need you. But I said, no. If the war's gonna start, I will stand my ground. Because back then, I wanted to be badass. I had no idea what it really takes to actually be a badass, but I wanted to be a badass so hard.
Mm-hmm. And then, so fast forward, the war starts. What happens? You enlist, and
so the war starts. Is everybody rushes in. like local territorial defense units, and I stuck with my friends from the U.S. NGO with whom I taught English. So we rolled around Kiev for a while.
So you decide to enlist. The war starts. How did you make it to the front line?
All right. So first of all, like when the war just started, it was not straightforward to enlist because everybody rushed in to enlist, and our enlistment system was totally overwhelmed. So there was no way of going through it like within several months. And I just went to Lviv with my foreign guys, where a lot of Westerners were coming, and they needed a translation. So a lot of Westerners, they did like provided training for Ukrainian troops that were amassing like territorial defense, and like I was just translating for them, and on the way like learning some basic things like how do you handle weapons, what is bounding, what is bounding by fire, what is battle drill 1 alpha, like how do you establish checkpoints, how do you CQB, well, all of that, like the basics of how to military. And then I figured out that there was a group of guys who did the instructions who were pretty competent, and they were like, "Want to fight? Want to go to the south where the fight is?" And I was like, "All right, let's go." So we went to Odessa, and in Odessa we established contacts with several military units that were stationed in Mykolaiv. That was the closest big Ukrainian city to the active front line, where the Russian forces were stopped. And we did some training for them. And then we had a talk with a brigade commander of one of the Ukrainian mechanized brigades that fights on the southern part of the line. And he said, "Well, all right, so if you want to roll with us, like here's a javelin, and our recon company will show you like where your target is." And we did like one reconnaissance patrol to the area of operations, and then the other day we took the javelin and we went to the place to hit the target. So how did it look like? Like the front line, the southernmost part of the front line, like that's next to the shoreline of the Black Sea, Russians were stopped in the village of Alexandrivka, and it was like separated from the Ukrainian side like by a river, and there was a dam covering the river across which there was a road going to Alexandrivka. So the Ukrainian side of the dam was a high ground, and Alexandrivka was a low ground. And the recon company, they told us that there is a position where Russian BMP rolls out when they start the shelling of Alexandrivka, because they're preparing to defend from an attack. And the idea was we move in with the javelin, we're ready in position, they give the command to start shelling, and we smoke the BMP. The day we went on the mission, we reached a point when the guys from the Ukrainian recon company say okay, if you want, you can go further, we will stay here and wait. And it was late May, it was super hot, it's south of Ukraine, the weather is a little bit like Texas, this late spring Texas. So we were like, all right, this smells like something there is wrong, but we better die than carry that javelin missile all the way back. So we went in, radioed in, they started the shelling. We didn't see anything because the actual distance was 2 kilometers. It was on the verge of the capabilities of our first generation javelin. And the only thing, we could just aim with CLU, and at some point it showed there is something there that we can lock on. And the distance was so high that whatever binoculars, whatever optics we have, we couldn't see anything from the distance that high. So okay, I guess we have a lock, that may be it. We strapped on the missile, and the Australian guy from our team presses the triggers, the missiles fire, and suddenly there is an automatic gunfire from all the sides, and we just duck and run. So, as later were shown by the drone footage, like the night before the op, the Russians have made several new observation points, so that our area of operations from which we performed the strike, like it was in the cross section in the sectors of fire of 3 Russian spots that had like machine guns nests, like the probably snipers and like a lot of guys. So we took a lot of fire, and the thing that saved us is like along the coastline there was a road, and behind the road there was a slight slope that is barely visible when you look at it from straight, and you need to go into the field to the Russian side, so the person would stay behind the road, and then you can see that it's not full height, but it's like starting from chest. And we like duck behind the road, and that's why the bullets whizzed over our heads, and it's just a sheer down block that we get alive. And yeah, we have a videos of that, and it was on the national news in Ukraine, so it's like open information. And
So fast forward.
yeah,
Fast forward, these are the opening days and weeks of the war. You were active duty for a while, I mean, on the front line. What were some of the other fronts that you were a part of, and how do those operations differ versus kind of the opening days of the war when, even in America, we were watching dozens and dozens of videos of, Russian incompetency and just kind of, to use an American term, a shit show.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of videos of Russian incompetency that get posted online by Ukrainian weekends, but if you know where to find, you can find pretty substantial amounts of similar videos from the Russian side. Well, probably less in dolls, but it's also like hundreds of videos during the entire course of the war. And also, there are a lot of Russians. Like, they totally outnumber us, and they have a lot of units that are also competent, very competent. Like, just by sheer numbers, they're like top 10% of their competent units. They're as good as our best units, and they have more of them.
Yeah.
It's just their average level will be lower.
All right, so, you fought in the opening days and weeks of the war along the Southern Front. There were videos from both sides kind of just showing the general, shit show of the war and kind of the improvisation of it. Eventually, the situation becomes kind of stable, and that there becomes a front, and there's specific local conflicts. What does that look like for you? What was your experience fighting on that aspect of the war in the later weeks and months?
Yeah, the frontline vibes. Well, I get to the frontline when there was an age of total Russian artillery dominance, when they just had more barrels, when they had more ammo, and they had a lot of Orlan-class recon drones flying all over our heads, and like everywhere within 10 kilometers from a frontline, like you park a car, you can expect shells starting dropping near you within 5 minutes. So they're not that incompetent. But over time, on that Kherson front line, like a couple months in, the Gimler's enabled HIMARSes start arriving, and like I was spending by that time a lot of time on the battalion level command post, like watching through cameras, and it was like every morning, sit, coffee, those are Russian artillery silos going off, hit by Gimler's rockets. And a couple weeks in, you can walk freely on the streets without fear that you will be shelled, because Russians do not have enough ammo to dump them on every single footman and every single car. You're like, yes. And while like watching and like guiding drone streams from our side, I see that like the aid is coming in, and we can like throw some mortar rounds on literally every of their footmen. And let's change around again near Bakhmut. When Russian ramped up their countermeasures game, they have decentralized their stockpiles, and the efficiency of US provided gimless rockets dropped off. And then we had again this we fought against the Wagner PMC, like on our part of Frontline. Wagner PMC first, then they changed to Russian VDVs, and they sort of returned to like outgunning and outshelling us. And
This is for context, early 2023 at this point?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
The Battle of Bakhmut, like we held one of the sides of Bakhmut, and like our battalion was moved to stop Russian offense that was directed to cut the last lifeline to Bakhmut. And we did it, and that was some of the heaviest fighting I participated in.
And how did you do that? Was it trench to trench? Was it drones against drones, artillery against artillery? What was kind of...
It was all of it. It was people manning the trenches, and it was drones flying around and providing guidance for artillery, and it was the early age of FPV drones and bomber drones. Like around those front lines, there was so much drones that it was the first time when, like back on the Kherson front line, you could detect a single drone just because it's like buzzing. You could hear this buzzing sound, and it was an event that you would report, like we would hear the buzzing drone, and then you would get a response if this is ours or enemy. On Bakhmut, like the buzzing in the air, it was constant. And like nobody reported anymore on a single drones. So like drones were swarming the sky, and if you watch streams for long enough, like you can see those drones bumping into one another.
Real.
Occasionally. Yeah, I've seen that a couple of times.
And so, you know, it sounds like the war for both sides has had lots of ups and downs, you know, disastrous operations that are succeeded by successful ones, munitions that are initially very effective and then they're countered. As you zoom out and think about the war, have you gotten more or less optimistic over time?
Well, I think we had like a pretty low starting point. Like the earliest days of war is you received only news about our troops losing ground and watching at the map and the front line moving towards you, and like the Kyiv was in danger, and all the Western aid was delayed, and negotiations and politics, and everybody expecting like Kyiv to fall. And since then, like overall, I think it's way more optimistic now, because right now the general consensus is there might be like a difference in like on which exactly lines will this war end, but at least right now there is a certain level of assurance that Ukraine will exist at all.
Interesting.
And hey, we fought and won like our sea roads. That's not nothing, and back then we didn't have it.
And so, I guess on that front, something that's interesting to me is, you know, you're not denying the fact that the Russians are very competent, like more competent than we oftentimes portray in Western media. The country's obviously, you know, not 10 times larger by population, but like, you know, I think it's 3.5 times significant, huge manufacturing capacity, obviously, huge amount of land. Where is Ukraine's advantage, besides obviously just being the defender, which is not a negligent one, it's an important part of the picture. What gives you optimism, I guess, is kind of another phrasing of the question. Culturally, technologically, the aid, anything that's
Well, it's just a delta between what we had and what we have now. So we have a lot more support from our partners. Uh, there are like back then, there was a lot of this like early pessimistic vibe that Ukraine will be over in a few days, so there is no point in even start like to change the gears. And then there was another like vibe that this war will be over in several months, and like Ukraine will throw the towel, and like there will be just new wars. So there is no point in like developing aid programs that go for like 3 years, for 5 years, and preparing like to develop like some complex combat systems that require long time investments into training processes like F-16s, or well, Air Force is a primary example, but there are many others. And right now, well, there seems to be that there is like a general consensus that there is a war of like free world and free people versus a tyranny, and the people that want to support the free world, that just want to have the free world win, it would be so good, it would be so satisfying. They're like organized, and there are a lot of like organizational things that have been done. So if you want to like support Ukraine, support the free world, support the people that do here, that like you know where to go, you know where to put your donations, and there will be all of those will like contribute to some level efficiency to our general effort. And back then, like none of them existed, and it was not evident that anything of this will emerge.
So you fought in all these different battles, both in the opening weeks of the war and then, obviously months later, years later. What is the craziest or the what's the story that you go back to the most? The thing that you think about, the highlight of the war, not necessarily the highlight in a good way, but something that you think about the most.
It was my last day on the front line, where I tried to be a big damn hero and failed miserably. So the story was that I needed to, like, I did my regular morning routine when I go from my like command post and go pick up the recon team, drive them to OB, then observation post. Drive them to observation post, then I go pick up the drone recon team, drive them back, pick up another shift of the drone recon teams, drive them like to the drone recon operation point, and like on my way back from the drone recon operation point, I've noticed that there was one of our like medevac buses. It got stuck. Like it's the old Soviet bukhanka that's often breaks down. Like it's often goes silent. So like I drove near the guy, and I started to pull him out. So we started to drive. I pulled him out of the dirt where he gets stuck, and like the Russians started shelling around us. So like, and it was such a massive emotions. Like on what's it? Like, oh Jesus Christ, I have to leave Kiev like today. And this is like my last day on the battlefield, and it would be so dumb that like this day I get like died under this shelling. So nervous. And from the other hand, like this is like so cool would be if like on my last day I do like one good thing. If I like could drive this like medevac out of the danger. It's like a small feat. Like yeah, so good, so sweet. And I was driving, then I was trying to pull this medevac over a bump, and like he was tied like by a hose that was holding by a wrench on my car, and it just snapped out. We were still under Russian artillery shelling, so the guy went close to my car. I asked him like, "Is your engine still running? Can you drive yourself?" And as far as I remember, he said yes. I was tough, like, okay, then let's delta, like, we're still being shelled. And I drove out. So, and when I got back to like my battalion unit, feeling all the proud of myself, like so good, like mission accomplished, I saved the guy. It turned out that while this guy got in his car and he's tried to drive over that bump, like his engine shot dead, and he got stuck there again under the shelling. And of course, like he radioed back to like my command post and said, "Hey, why the fuck your Rican has dropped me under the shelling?" And I was like, "God damn it!" So yeah,
Did he end up being okay?
yeah, he ended up being okay. Like he got pulled out, and our counter battery fire made those guns go silent. But yeah, well, that's the stories when like you're an average IT guy and you want to be a big damn hero, and then you end up performing as a regular IT guy on the front line.
Sure. Last question. Obviously, you've mentioned the importance of all the partnerships that you guys have with other NATO countries and United States being one of them. What's your wish list for what we did differently or didn't do or did do that we're not doing? How can we be, more supportive, essentially, or a more effective ally?
Yeah, like these are some big questions that the best minds of both our sides are working on, but like you're doing a pretty great job at like doing the financial whack-a-mole and grinding down the Russians' economy. So like every big business except probably their oil is going down, and like they're still receiving the Western electronics, which goes into their missiles and other weapon system. But the price tag for those is consistently rising, so please keep doing that. And that's like just keep applying those financial pressure. It takes a continuous effort, and like it's not something that's visible that will make like cool videos from FPV drones. It's just a bunch of like economy nerds will understand that keep the hand on the pulse of Russian macroeconomics. And the other thing is just, well, do some planning at what will be the position of Western world when China decides that they want to back up Russia all in.
Meaning cutting components to Ukraine and
Cutting components to Ukraine, supplying lethal weapons to Russia, and also just supplying en masse their combat drones to every power-hungry idiot in every third world country in the world.
that's a powerful mission to end on. Well, Dmytro, thank you so much for joining New Frontier. Appreciate you coming on.
The pleasure's all mine.